Hello, my name is Emily May, and today I will be discussing question D in case 1.1 over Walmart. I will be discussing what Walmart's two largest assets on the balance sheet are and how do these assets reflect Walmart's strategy. I found Walmart's annual report for 2020 on their investment relations site, and that is where all of my information has come from. I have updated the numbers to reflect the 2020 numbers on the balance sheet. On page 52 of the annual report, you can see that the two largest assets on the balance sheet for 2020 were property and equipment at $105,208,000,000 and inventories, which were $44,435,000,000. This made up, in part with other assets, to make total assets for 2020 to be $236,495,000,000. On page 56 of the annual report, it shows that property and equipment were broken out, and the largest item in that was building and improvements at $105,674,000,000, but that is before any depreciation was taken. These assets reflect Walmart's strategy in that the property and equipment help advance the physical retail space of the brick and mortar stores. And this was found in their strategy to say that they want to differentiate based on access. And with more stores and more property, Walmart can access more communities and areas. And they can also serve their customers better. In 2020, it was on their Walmart's annual report that they launched next day delivery to more than 75% of the U.S. population and delivery unlimited from 1,600 locations in the United States. They also have same-day pickup for nearly 3,200 locations. And this means that they need the equipment and the property to be able to have the infrastructure to get those inventories to consumers. So that's why part of why their property value is so high, because they need the real estate space to house all of the inventory that they have. And speaking of, the inventory is the second largest asset on the balance sheet. And obviously, Walmart needs to keep items in stock, or else consumers will not be happy with Walmart and will be less inclined to go back if they're having to go to multiple stores anyways to get the products that they need. For example, I this summer had to go to Whole Foods sometimes to get products that I couldn't find at Walmart because they were sold out. So it's very important for Walmart to have enough inventory on hand to keep customers satisfied in their stores. And when they order through e-commerce, which is a new bigger area for Walmart that they've expanded into to try to compete with Amazon. So that is why the inventory and the property and equipment is so high, and how they reflect Walmart's strategy of serving their customers and making sure that they come first and that they can have a low cost, but also have good access to their customers in all of their areas.
My name is Drew Tipton, and today I'm going to be discussing question C of case 1.1, discussing Walmart. The question was, describe how cash differs from cash equivalents. So cash is pretty simple. It refers to the literal currency that a company is in possession of, which is bills, coins, currency notes, anything of that nature. Now, cash equivalents is where it's a little more confusing. It refers to investment securities, and these securities are basically very highly liquid, which means they could be converted into cash extremely quickly, which is what companies want because it allows them to pay off short-term debt faster. So there are 5 types of cash equivalents, which are treasury bills, commercial papers, marketable securities, money market funds, and short-term government bonds. So treasury bills are basically securities where a company lends the government money. So the government would owe them money back, and they would be able to pay it, turn that into cash quickly. Commercial papers are basically short-term loans. Marketable securities are just financial assets that could quickly be converted into cash or highly liquid. Money market funds are similar to checking accounts for a company, and short-term government bonds are just what they sound like. They're used for government projects. And that is all I have for question C. Thank you for listening.
Hey, Dr. Who. My question is question F. How does accumulated depreciation on the balance sheet differ from depreciation expense on the income statement? So what I got is the noticeable difference between accumulated depreciation and depreciation expense is that accumulated depreciation is the sum amount that a company depreciates its assets, whereas depreciation expense is the sum a company's assets are depreciated for a single period. The accumulated depreciation account is a contra asset account on a company's balance sheet, meaning it has a credit balance. It appears on the balance sheet as a reduction from the gross amount of fixed assets reported. The amount of accumulated depreciation for an asset or group of assets will increase over time as depreciation expense continue to be credited against the assets. When an asset is eventually sold or put out of use, the accumulated depreciation associated with that asset will be reversed, eliminating all record of the asset from the company's balance sheet. Depreciation expense, on the other hand, are an allocated portion of the cost of a company's fixed assets that are appropriate for the period. Depreciation expense is recognized on the income statement as a non-cash expense that reduces the company's net income. For accounting purposes, the depreciation expense is debited and the accumulated depreciation is credited. It is considered a non-cash expense because the recurring monthly depreciation entry does not involve a cash transaction. Because of this, the statement of cash flows prepared under the indirect method adds the depreciation expense back to calculate cash flow from operations. Typical depreciation methods can include straight line, double declining balance, and units of production. Another thing about depreciation expense is the balance in the depreciation expense account increases over the course of an entity's fiscal year and is then flushed out and set to zero as part of the year-end closing process. The account is then used again to store depreciation charges in the fiscal year. And as you can kind of see, I don't have it pulled up right now, but it's in the case that, let me find it, that you have for, say, year 2014, for depreciation expense, depreciation and amortization expenses, you have 8,870 in millions for 2014. And then for 2014, accumulated depreciation is a credit balance. It's a negative balance of 60,771. So as you can see, that is credited. It is, and the depreciation expense account is debited. And that is all I have to say.